Welcome to your awakening. Please take all as your reality is adjusted.
Welcome to your clicky buttons. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Find the right screen and press the right button. Alright, now we're back again. Have I unmuted myself? Yes. I've been rapid on the mute button tonight. But hello, good evening, welcome, greetings, salutations, well met, fellow, hail, and hello. Hail and hello. I hope you're well. I've been battling the flu over the weekend, so I'm still a bit sniffly and coughy. So if I missed the mute button before coughing at you, I apologise in advance. But hello and welcome back. Another episode, another edition of Sol Excalibre on this moon day evening. Let me just adjust that screen so I can see the chat room properly. Hello in the chat room, Stewie. Hello, happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And Dave Iron, hello. And Lopsum Tatro, hello. Happy Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you're all having a good one. Before I break into singing Wizard songs. Was it Wizard or was it Slade? Or whatever. Cheesy 70s rock music. Yes, it is the 30th of the 12th, 2019, star date 3012-2019, just after 8 p.m. as per usual. It's sort of a minute or two after, but we get here eventually. I don't think it's going to be a long one tonight because I'm knackered and I'm still coughing and blustering, so more than I usually do anyway. So I'm going to try and get on with what I wanted to sort of talk about, mention, point out. It's somewhat of an esoteric point of view on what's been going on over the last decade. I know because it's the end of the year, a lot of people sort of do that thing where they talk about the news events of the year or the things that have gone on during the last year. But this is not only the end of the year, it's the end of the decade. We're coming into the new decade, so let's look at it from the point of view of all the stuff that's happened over the last decade. And I have no intention of doing a laundry list of things because there is just a lot of stuff. I think it would take far too long to sit and go through all the different events and occurrences and revelations and whatever else has happened over the last decade. Just the fact that, well, it's not a whole decade's worth, but nearly, I think, the past 7 years worth of stuff that's on my channel. I wouldn't recommend it because it'd take far too long, but if you did sort of go through nearly every week, near enough every week, we're talking about events that have occurred during the last week. So if you made a big list of all that stuff that's happened over the last several years, like I say, that's just several years. It's not the entire decade. We began the decade with the supposed running down of the crash, the depression, the financial calamities that rose out of 2008, 2009 as that decade was coming to an end. The housing crisis, the derivatives crisis, all that kind of stuff that led to the bullshit that was called austerity in the UK and the beginnings of the drawing in of all the finances into that vacuum that is the banking system that then funnels it towards certain groups and individuals. So the wealth gap in the last decade has become absolutely obscene. And I'm not talking about the removal of wealth and redistribution and stuff like that. Just if you look at the total gap, the numbers of people, there are literally a handful of people that supposedly own, can question the ownership claim, but they own nearly 50% of the wealth on the planet. Yeah, according to the analysts that tell us about how much money there is and stuff like that, all of that could be questioned as well. But that wealth gap has just increased exponentially. And now we're starting to, and this is my point of view, and why I say it's somewhat esoteric, but we're starting to birth into that next phase, which is the domination of the corporate crony capitalist system, where the old models of monarchies and even democracies are going to start becoming so last century. They are being systematically eroded, or more the reality of it, I think, is more that the facade is being washed away. Now that people have been acclimatized to the new reality, the facade that used to be used as an illusion to deceive people is being taken down. As Frank Zappa put it, when they start taking the set decoration off the stage and you see the brick wall at the back of the stage, now the true corporatocracy, it doesn't need to be as hidden as it has been in the past century. Over the last century, we transferred from a time of overt empires, imperialism, totally overt imperialism, and we switched to this disguised pseudo-democratic system, and that has been used for the last century to get people's productivity to drive the direction of the entire globe, the human race and the planet, the environment we're all sharing, in a certain direction that has brought us to here. And in the last decade, I think we've seen very much so the effort to now do away with that facade and make it, no, it's not so much making it obvious, it's just normalizing it. It's making it so normalized that they don't have to hide it anymore. If anything, it's actually counterproductive for them to hide it, because by hiding it, that causes more people to question whether its validity and its claims to authority. So now they just state it blatantly, as if this is normality, folks. No, it's always been this way. Where have you been? Didn't you realize water is wet? And they treat it as if it's a completely normal, accepted law of the natural world that things are this way. But the reality of it is, no, it's only that way because they impose that structure upon the rest of us. And that imposition is always backed up by force, or the threat of force, the fear of the use of force, and the usual kind of, processes of fear-based manipulation. So people's fear of loss, fear of death, all that kind of stuff, which the system is very, very good at utilizing against you, against all of us. So yeah, the last decade, I saw the last decade very much as being the decade of change. I thought about having some clips of Obama doing the change, yes we can, hope and change stuff. And then of course you've got the changing of the internet environment, where from the 90s and the noughties, it was still very much a kind of, how to put it, it was an interesting area, a bit of a Wild West zone to a large degree, but it was an emerging environment, emerging technology, and people were still getting used to it, getting used to the idea of what they could do with it. And of course, businesses and capitalism came into it, commercialism and all that kind of stuff. And it gradually transformed from a tool that was more about information and data even if that data was people's opinions on subjects. It went more from being just like this melting pot of information into a shopping mall, and then the shopping mall became an entertainment complex. So now most people, and I'm pretty much do this myself, a large part of my kind of entertainment value comes via the internet technology in one way or another, where I'm listening to music or watching a movie or doing stuff on the internet like this. Not that I treat this as entertainment, but I think you get the point. People have transferred from having different bits of technology to provide different elements of their entertainment and rest and relaxation and stuff like that. And it's all been gradually amalgamated into this one thing where you have an access device, whether it's handheld or desktop or whatever, or your phone. You have some kind of access device that allows you to go onto the internet and move around on the internet and blah, blah, blah. We had the rise of the cloud-based system, which, we could have a long debate about how that was all systematically stepping stone planned, a gradualism plan of doing exactly that, creating an environment where, and this is where it's going to, we're not quite there yet, not quite, but it's coming in the next decade, getting into an environment where you don't own anything unless it be something that is virtual. So you might own a virtual home, but you won't actually own the physical, literal home that you are residing in. That kind of ownership is being done away with, and instead you will have a corporatized contract lease that grants you usage, grants you access to a device or a tool or a mode of transport even. People won't own vehicles. You'll just summon one from the cloud using your access device, and you'll have credits that are the equivalent of what we use now, money, fiat money systems. Instead, you'll have credits on your device that are stored in the cloud with your biometric data, blah, blah, blah. I talk a lot over the past years about the revealing of the technocracy and things like that. And I don't want to belabor the point of how this environment is set up. I think I've said plenty enough about that kind of thing already. But the switch has now, we've gone past the fulcrum point, we've gone past the Rubicon. The majority of the infrastructure of this new way of being has been installed, it has been set up. Most of what we encounter now when people are questioning this coming technocratic dystopia is people, I know this sounds a bit condescending, I don't mean it to be condescending, it's just what I see. I'm trying to just observe what I'm seeing. Most of it is the lamentation of something that has already gone. It's already dead. Most of what people have been experiencing that often is referred to as the awakening or the apocalypse, the great revealing, the change of the age, that has been a very dominant theme in not only this environment, in particular on YouTube and Facebook and some of the main platforms, but it has been a cultural theme easily for the last decade, maybe a little bit longer, but they really ramped it up over this last decade. They wanted this to be a popular idea in its branded, corporatized presentation. They wanted people to get on board the woke train. And as I've talked about many times in the past, when they do this kind of thing, most of the time it is not from their own invention, as in they came up with the idea from out of nowhere and they've deliberately enabled and created the situation from scratch. Most of the time they are appropriating something that is already occurring naturally. Our societies have got to a saturation point, and most people are aware of this. They're just maybe not certain how it is doing what it's doing and how it's affecting them and their lives. But we've got to that end of the century kind of mentality where people feel like, well, is this it? What's going on? Shouldn't there be more than this? Shouldn't we all be flying around in jet-powered cars now and living on the moon and eating space food? Thinking at it from the point of view as each generation was sold their generation's version of the propaganda to keep you moving in a certain direction. As Alan Watts put it, the here kitty kitty effect. It's like, we want you to go this way and we want you to build your society in this format. So we coax you along this direction. And part of that direction was acquiescing people to the concept of revolutionary change. That the old world, the world of last century, the world of the 20th century is gone. It's done with, it's ended. Now you're in the new age, the 21st century, the Novus Seclorum, like it is on the dollar bill, the new age. That's a bit of a manipulated, cliched meme as well, but it is still very applicable to what they're doing with tricking and persuading and normalizing people to the new environment, which is this corporatized, technocratic surveillance state dystopia. So in that process over the last decade, and now I'll try and get to the point of why I put the subtitle the way it is, the decade of the phockoo. I've been thinking about this over the Christmas period. I hope you've all been having a great Christmas. I had a fairly quiet Christmas, but good stuff. But I've been thinking about some of this stuff, the Phoenix effect that I've talked a lot about recently, that to me, I felt I'd seen building up over this year in particular, potentially connected to the Brexit situation, as in, are they trying to subtly persuade people that the Brexit is like the Phoenix fire and Britain is going to emerge anew as the Great Britannia and the old empire will rise again and it'll just like the 50s and 60s and way. And they've been subtly prodding that fire in one way or another. Or is it in a somewhat similar way, but slightly different, slightly separate from, connected to some of the revelations that have been occurring around the old world, the old paradigm concepts of authority and power? In other words, the systems of monarchy and democracy. The monarchies have been brought down all over the place. And here in the UK in particular this year, it's been an immensely, how did the Queen put it ages ago, the horrible annus horribilis, because, she has to say it in Latin just because, to show how enlightened she is and how all-powerful she is and whatever. Just basically means the horrible year. Annus means year, horribilis, horrible, But this year has been more of a horrible anus for the royal family in the UK, and it's still that snowball, that burning fiery phoenix snowball is still accelerating, rolling downhill rapidly. And over the past couple of weeks, they've been making great effort to stuff the royals in every news article that they can. They've been on multiple front pages over the last couple of weeks. And the one story that really stuck out to me was Kate visiting the pediatric ward to talk to the nurses who care for the little children. It's like, yeah, Andrew abuses children, but never mind that, folks. Here's Kate. Look at her visiting the hospital and being all nice to the little kiddies. Oh, isn't it great? Isn't it wonderful? We are great. You do love us, don't you? It's sickening, but this is the pulling off the plaster effect. I feel very much that people need that sickening horror, to not diminish the situation in any way at all, but it is that bringing down of the dissonance of these people present themselves as being somebody that you should love, that you should care about, because supposedly they care about the whole nation, as if you are all their children, as if you are the family of the royal family, and all that kind of PR impression that they put across to the public. Whereas as the reality is revealed, you can see the dissonance occurring in people of like, all my life I've been told that the royals are this, that, and the other, and now find out that like Andrew's doing this and but that's the yanking off of the plaster. You know, if you just pick away at it and pull it a little bit, it hurts more, and it potentially doesn't do you any benefit. You know, just get it off, do it, deal with it. And over the last year in particular, I feel very much that they pushed this concept or fueled this concept that major changes are occurring now as we go into 2020 in the new decade. Major changes are happening. I mentioned about attacking the concept of monarchy and stuff like that. I'm not trying to suggest that I agree with monarchy or I'm trying to defend it, not at all. But this is the process of normalization that they're doing with the public, of saying, look, your old ideas of authority and how the structure of society operates are done with. We're going into a new environment now where everything you know, everything you know is going to be fed to you via a screen or a voice, a spoken, digitized voice that sounds, like a human, but he's electronically generated from an AI bot and all that kind of shit. You are going to be a technically fed little piglet, attached to that virtual nipple, where all your knowledge of reality and all your desires and hopes and expectations are going to be fed to you via that little nipple. They need people to be able to accept that and deal with it as if it's normal, as if that's the way life has always been. It's very much like, how did they, if you take just as an analogy to the situation, the concept as presented in the movie The Matrix, and I know people complain, oh, you're talking about sugar. But in the concept in the Matrix, where all the humans are connected into these little pods that are linked into a virtual reality world, basically, and that's the Matrix. And they think they're all still in the real world, but actually they're all plugged into this machine as batteries. But the question is, when somebody first invents that kind of technology, how do you go through the process of getting people to accept it as if it's normal and go along with it in the first place? You have to get them acclimatized to it. You have to get them normalized to it. You have to get them to have a mindset that just sees it as being, well, this is reality. What are you talking about, mate? 100 years ago, we don't care about 100 years ago, mate. This is now. This, get with the new technology. This is where we live now, in the virtual world, not in the real world. That process is very much like a process of utilized by the cuckoo bird. Get rid of the real phoenix. This is why I put in the subtitle the phockoo, because as I've been thinking about this phoenix effect and how they are attempting to get people to externalize their own evolutionary process. And no, I'm not talking about Darwinian evolution. So if you're religiously minded and you have a problem with that, I'm not talking about that kind of concept of evolution. I'm talking about your own personal growth, your own inner development, your spiritual growth, your soul growth, however you want to label it, whatever particular terms are comfortable for you, but it's the same thing. We all progress through life and we develop mentally, psychologically, and spiritually, energetically as we go through life. But they want you to externalize that process, which is an unnatural thing to do. There are external methods that you can utilize to help you through that process. The majority, I'd argue, really all modern organized religions have appropriated that process, that principle, and turned it into an externalized ceremonial dogma that certainly the congregations don't understand, and the majority of the people actually enacting the ceremonies don't understand either. They're carrying out ceremonies and performing rituals that they have no concept of what those things represent. And they're doing it in an external way, which means the people are not doing it within themselves. They've abdicated their own self-development, and instead they're doing it with little icons on a table. And they think that they're then going to progress to the next world or the higher state of being or whatever else. But they've been cuckolded. Their own real development has been kicked out of the nest. And instead, a cuckoo egg has been put in that nest. And the person has been persuaded that that's the normal. Yeah, your baby chick always looked like this. What are you on about? Are you crazy? Are you one of those old-fashioned people that think things are different? No, this is the new reality, mate. And then it had me thinking about how that Phoenix effect, I've often talked about it in the past. I referred to it as the Phoenix Gate, as in they want people to get to that fulcrum point and adopt or accept the concept of the Phoenix as given to them. In other words, the way it normally emanates is in that revolutionary change within a nation state or the world as a whole. You know, there's been some global revolutions that are more culturally based and things like that. But the very idea that the only way you're going to progress to something new and better or something better, you know, it's just by definition, it's new, potentially, or people are given that impression anyway. But the only way you're supposedly going to be able to do that is by destroying what's already there. So you have this revolutionary concept that's fed into people's minds in a way that is presented with that kind of Phoenix concept, Phoenix principle, subtly attached to it. So people adopt the idea that, oh yeah, if we burn down everything that's here now and then we can build something new, the Phoenix can rise again. That whole Phoenix principle is nothing to do with the external. You know, that's again is the trick that they're getting people to abdicate their self-authorship and externalize it and hand it over to somebody else, a middleman expert or priest that does the process for you in an externalized fashion. Therefore, it does nothing, goes nowhere, does nothing. But utilizing that idea, that concept of the Phoenix, the principle of that ever rebirthing, ever recycling energy that comes back renewed, refreshed, reinvigorated with all the energy of life. You know, it represents just the cycle of life and the absolute truth that the entire universe, the whole of reality as we know it, as far as we can see and scan and register, is in a constant state of change. It's only our experience of linear time that gives us that perception that anything is a particular shape for any length of time. So the very idea of conservatism is meaningless once you expand your mind beyond a certain time reference. 10 million years ago, the idea of a conservative institution was meaningless, completely and utterly meaningless. Maybe there were some people who liked, you know, putting their stones in one particular place, you know, constantly. You could argue that's conservatism in a way, but anyway, digressing myself. That idea of that recycling, destruction of the old to bring in the new perfectly suits this change of the age that they've been trying to persuade people into, so that people are more willing to give up on things from the past that they're told are not good for them, and instead adopt and normalize the new things that are being presented to them. So why bother writing a letter to somebody when you can just use your device and go blip, 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 and send them a text? Why bother? That's old century, mate. Get with the new. What are you doing that shit for? Yeah, I'm not, you know, I'm deliberately leaving out the questions about which is more efficient and stuff like that. You know, it's just the fact that this is about how they are persuading people that the change is normalized, so that the general populace is cuckolded into accepting this as the new normal. Now, there's a point I've got to make in particular about that. Cuckolding as a concept, it's not something new. It's not something just to do with the porn industry. The way it's emanated in the porn industry, I think, is quite telling of how the psyche of modern society has been deliberately pushed into a direction of self-abuse, of being the kind of masochistic servant, subservient. I'm trying to think of a better word to describe a slave that enjoys being beaten, basically. But really, it comes out of, I think, the Middle Ages, as far as I remember when I was looking at it to check earlier. And I think it begins mainly amongst the people who have a primary concern with what is, long before the term was coined or put in books, with what is eugenics. Because back in those times, if a lord was cuckolded and had an illegitimate child within their family that could vie for heirship and take away the lands that were supposedly owned by that lord and whatever, it had quite a significant fear value for those people in that environment. So the concept of that happening to them becomes encoded into this concept of the cuckold, which is a derivative of cuckoo, the cuckoo bird that puts its eggs in other birds' nests, etc., etc. But over the centuries, this concept developed, and certainly in the modern age, the concept has developed to this point where it's more about the self-abuse, the masochism, the being subservient to somebody else's supposed authority, to the point that you will even actually enjoy being abused by that supposed authority. In the past, I've talked about this concept of how society has been turned into a GIMP mentality. I think it was when that movie series started coming out about the 50 Shades of Grey, I think it was. I know it's based on a book series and whatever, but at the time I was talking about it because it was a big, major blockbuster movie going around at the time, and everybody was talking about how great it was and all that kind of stuff. And they played the feminism angle of how it's supposedly empowering women. You're empowered to be a GIMP. You see how that normalizes that kind of mindset for people, so that then when the government, the supposed authorities like Prince Andrew, abuse you or your children, you're supposed to actually enjoy it and think it's perfectly normal. Why not? 50 Shades of Grey, mate. This is the new world. This is what happens. Get with the times. So the phockoo. As I was thinking about this concept of how, by creating this externalization environment where people abdicate their self-authorship and hand it out to others that supposedly do it for them, combined with this mentality, this mindset of masochistic subservience, where people have this attitude of, well, it's the government, mate. Of course the government, that's what the government has to do. I can't believe that they'd be doing something bad to us. And what do you mean by bad? I actually like it when the government abuses me, because that's the right normal thing, isn't it? Double plus good. And this is the kind of concept Orwell was trying to present in 1984, is the fact that it's not so much about the technology that's used, because technology changes over time. Modern technologies give them more power in this way. It's given them greater reach. It's given them greater ability in the ways that they can manipulate people and control them and blah, blah, blah. But it's still just technology. But really, the crux of the problem was the public's mentality and their acceptance that this is normal, this is the way it is. We do our hour of hate in front of the big mega screen, and then we go back to work producing the munitions to carry on the war against the icon of hate that we've been presented with. And this is how the world has worked for a long time. And now they're starting to do away with that facade because they feel that it's been normalized enough that they don't need to do that level of manipulation anymore. People now actually want to be part of that surveillance state, dystopian panopticon, virtualized panopticon. And if in the process of being part of that environment, it involves them giving up a lot of what they consider to be part of their life, of part of themselves, because you're no longer allowed to own anything. And that includes what's in your head. You don't own that. That was given to you by an institution of education. Therefore, it's, you know, copyright, proprietary information from that institution. You don't own it. You're just leasing it. You think you own the words coming out of your mouth. You don't. You're utilising the English language. Therefore, you are leasing that from the Queen at the moment, yeah? Or the Crown Estate. I know that seems a bit obtuse or semantic in the reality of how we communicate with each other and just talk, and, you know, we can do that, so we do. There isn't an agent of the government following us around going, oh, you said this many words, you owe us this much tax. But then compare that to the digital environment. You know, that's your real world experience and knowledge of how the world used to be. Now compare that to the modern age that they're bringing us into, where a good portion of most people's communication now takes place in the digital virtual environment. And in that environment, every word you utter can have a cost that can be charged ka-ching, quite immediately via that technology. You know, you type the wrong word in, you get a ban. That ban causes a reaction on your social media page. That reaction is monitored by your employer, who says, oh, you said naughty word there, you're sacked. So that's had a very big financial cost to you for saying a certain word online. You know, and that can, now it's stretching into the real world as well. So, you know, they can pursue you for things you said by vocal, you know, literally wording with your mouth, but they can apply virtual judgment on you for that. You can get an ASBO for saying the wrong kind of thing. And, you know, all this stuff is that abdication of authority, an externalization of people's own inner processes into some kind of ceremonial dogma that is performed by somebody else, supposedly for your benefit. But in actuality, all they're doing is neutralizing. They are neutering that process so that it doesn't go anywhere. Until you take that authority back and start doing it for yourself, it ain't ever going to go anywhere. You can go and join every religion and every different cult and occultic group and whatever, and you'll only ever learn so much, and it won't actually progress you until you start doing it for yourself. And most of the occultic ideas and concepts are about what goes on in here and in here, not in the physical world. Zion is not a physicality. Zion is a state of being. Yeah, and that's just referencing the Judeo concept of the idea. Anyway, back to the phockoo. So it had me thinking about a combination of phoenix and cuckoo. And Boris Johnson just reminds me so much of a cuckoo. Yeah. I didn't think about it till over the last week. If you ever seen a cuckoo chick, it always bewildered me when I was a kid, when I used to like watch the documentaries and they'd talk about cuckoos and they'd show video of it, and I'd be like, doesn't that bird realize that that's not its own chick? it's like twice the size of what its own chick should be, and it's got this crazy, like, you know, all crazy plumage all over. It just doesn't look like what that bird's chick should look like. But the birds just don't seem to notice because they've raised it since the egg hatched. So, you know, that natural instinct takes over, and that's the scientist's point of view anyway. Boris Johnson, yeah, very much reminds me of a cuckoo. But the Phoenix cuckoo, they've been feeding this concept of the Phoenix revolutionary change. As I mentioned earlier, the Obama hope and change, we can, yes we can, all that kind of stuff. And that supposed hope and change led to a lot more direct physical conflict, a lot more war zones opening up, a lot more of the military industrial complex getting, you know, turned over, getting money put into it, and weapons coming out the other end, and then those weapons get destroyed, so they need more money to go in to make more weapons, and on and on and on it goes, and bigger and bigger and bigger it gets. They've been feeding that Phoenix concept and pushing to make it culturally trendy to be woke and be talking about how the world has changed and we're now in the new age and we're all going to ascend to the fifth dimension and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, make it trendy. That way people will adopt it and they'll acclimatize to it and they'll normalize it, and it'll become part of everyday life. That you have this concept of, you know, oh, you're supposedly so aware of everything, you're so in tune with everything, you know what's going on, and you know, you're in with the in crowd, and that in crowd is created and monitored and manufactured by the hyper normalized technocratic state that now has the technological infrastructure to such a degree that they can quite easily, quite happily manage large swathes of the population utilizing bogus ideas and information in that manner. In the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s, and some of the 90s, it was what I usually refer to as the New Age church. You know, the concept of the New Age that was malformed into some kind of weird religion. Just look up the definition of religion, you'll see what I mean. It pretty much slots in there. It's just that it's a commercialism-based religion mostly. Unless you dig through all the bullshit, which is the same with all the religions. You'll find good stuff in all the religions. You just have to dig your way through all the bullshit and the dogma and the manipulation. But that was the one they used for that time period, for that demographic, for those of us like me, like Gen Xers, Gen Zs, you know, the people after the baby boomers, the main generation that was coming after the war, that was supposed to build the foundation for the infrastructure of the new age, which is pretty much what we did globally, worldwide. Because everybody near enough got on board when they started rolling out the idea of the internet, when they handed over the DARPANET to the public and started linking it all up, and it was the new age of technology, it was tomorrow's world now, all that kind of good stuff. Those foundations have been built now. Now we're on the next generation that is acclimatized to that foundation being there and being totally normal. That is normal life. That is normal everyday life, that the internet is there and I can log in and twit and twat to my mates on whatever platform. And if you take that away from me, I suddenly feel like the world has just ended. And when I'm saying I'm parodying other people's concepts, you know, I'm not saying that's true for myself. I'm being sarcastic and playing it as a character kind of thing. But the newest generation has been fully acclimatized to that environment being there and being normal and part of everyday natural life. To their phoenix of change, that concept and that principle, which is about the internal processes for you, yourself, and your own self-development, enlightenment does not mean, you know, discovering light somewhere or becoming a being of light yourself. I'll paraphrase the Carl Jung quote. It's not the imagining of beings of light, it's making the darkness conscious. And what he means by that is doing the shadow work. Making your darkness conscious means dealing with the dark shit within yourself so that it doesn't have any influence on you and your life. Dealing with it so it doesn't make you project it out onto other people. You don't externalize your shadow and become an arsehole like a lot of the people in power that are so obsessed with the physicality of this realm that they'll do whatever it takes to have more of that power over physicality, and that traps them. Like blood magic. As soon as you start trying to use blood magic, that ties you to physicality, to materialism, so therefore you become trapped in that materialism. That phoenix power, that concept, has been slowly replaced with this cuckoo version of a phoenix. It's why do this work for yourself? Why do your own shadow work and develop yourself when you can just externalize it to somebody who'll wave some crystals at you, or stand behind an altar and speak some words in Latin for you, or stand on a podium and talk about their latest ideological manifesto about how they're going to run the country in the next election. It's all the same kind of religious bullshit. Externalized, loss of authorship, abdication of power, and your own self-growth and evolution. You're raising a cuckoo bird. They've given you this cuckoo egg and told you it's a phoenix egg. And most of the population has been like a bonsai tree. They snip it here and there so it grows a certain direction, a certain shape that the gardener wants. It's a very, very controlled natural growth. It's not, free natural growth. It's controlled and snipped and manipulated and bound with wire to make it grow a certain way, all that kind of shit that they do. So now we have this population. I'm not saying this is true of everyone. Like I've said many times in the past, please don't take this personally. I'm more often than not talking in generalities about people in demographic chunks and things like that, not individuals. But a good portion of the population has now been normalized and acquiesced into this mindset that they don't know any different. They find it difficult to even comprehend when you try and point out the differences to them. It's like when you try to explain somebody's dissonance to them and they're like, what do you mean Andrew was connected to paedophiles? Are you crazy? In the royal family? It can't be true, can't be true. And you see the sticking of the gears because they struggle so much to let go of the dissonance, because that's the normality that they'd been given. And in the same way as when you go through a grieving process, everybody goes through that same grieving process when a part of your paradigm gets taken away, because it's just like a death. What you thought was part of normal life has been revealed to be illusory and non-beneficial, harmful. So once you see it for what it is and you give it up, it's like experiencing a death. Like somebody close to you has just died. That part of your reality has just died and faded away. You're left there going, oh, what happened? So everybody struggles with those processes. They encourage people to externalize that stuff to others, to third parties, to middlemen that claim to be experts or scientists or whatever. But in doing this, they've ended up with this population that has become like the cuckolded, in its traditional sense, the cuckolded husband, doesn't realize that he's raising children because they were somebody else's kids and stuff like that. But I mean it more in the sense of how that mindset is the mindset of an abused victim, a gimp, somebody suffering from Stockholm syndrome. But it goes beyond Stockholm syndrome, really, and that's when it becomes masochism, because they've got to a stage where they actually enjoy the abuse. They think it's normal. They think it's required for their everyday living. They don't feel normal unless the government boot has stamped on them, because that's what they've been taught to expect as normality. You know, that is the transition of that phoenix into a complete and utter cuckoo. So now, as we're going into this new decade, the last decade, this decade we're just leaving, I do think they have deliberately put across this concept of the world's changing, folks. Look at all the world change. Everything's changing in every direction. It's revolution everywhere. All the governments are falling apart. All of them are descending into chaos in one form or another, you know, split parliaments and stuff like that. But this is the age of change, where the corporations and the power of monetary wealth generated in a virtual environment, which means it is infinite growth, because there is no limit on how many zeros they can add onto an account. So it is infinite growth. Oh, don't worry, folks. If they run out of money in the real world, we can just have money in the virtual world. Way, enjoy your virtual carrot. You won't be able to chew it much, but you know, you can look at it on a screen. Maybe the VR will be able, yeah, you can pretend to eat it in the VR, but it won't give you any sustenance. Yeah. One other element to this that has been part of my thinking is the pointing out the female masculine elements to it over the last decade. There's been a lot of stuff over the last decade that has been very much connected to the feminine energy. And I know we've talked about, we talked about this kind of stuff many times over the years. And it is very much that they're trying to steer it towards the destructive parts of that feminine energy. But that's been a process leading to a rebirth. You know, the use of the kind of Kali iconography, you know, like the Kali imagery outside the CERN Institute. And then you had other cultural memes that have done the rounds, like Beyonce doing the Kali stuff and whatever. There's been quite a few things over the year. That laser projection thing they did as well. Yeah. There's been quite a few things over the last few years that have pushed, again, that concept of the destruction fire, the destruction of the old to bring about the new. The Kali principle is about the destruction of the new and bringing destruction of the old and bringing in of the new. Yeah, that's what Kali represents. Sorry, that's what the concept of Kali represents, is the destructive part of the process of change and rebirth. It's not the end of everything. It's the necessary dying off of the old. And again, it doesn't mean literally in the physical world. I'll try and round it up, because now I'm starting to get to that coughing stage. Like most of these kind of spiritual concepts, it's not talking about destruction in the real world, literally, like, you know, burning down the house. It's on about internal processes. It represents internal processes, spiritual processes of death of the old to bring in the new rebirth. As the energy is changed, because all energy goes through transformation, is transmuted from one form to another. That's what that concept represents. But the system has appropriated that and made it, as the way they present it to the general public, they've made it very much about all the kind of dark elements of all the destructor, the evil destruction that it's bringing. Yeah? And in that same way, they've presented the concept of the revolutionary change, and why we've had this rolling snowball all around the globe of different governments and nation states being brought down in some kind of revolution, whether it's an actual coup or outside forces coming in and taking over. But there has been this process of change around the globe, such that we're in the situation we are now, where for a lot of people, this is now the new normal. The new normal is the big military industrial complex going around the world, gobbling up all the smaller countries and slowly amalgamating them into the new empires of East versus West that then will be used as the Hegelian hammer and anvil to drive the world into a one world system. Some of the stuff about their agendas that suggests that all of this might come to be within another decade or so. In the mid-30s, 2030s to 2050 is when they seem to be projecting towards having the one world system emerge and begin. But I think it might take them a little bit longer than that. Most of the time their plans end up getting stretched out for one reason or another. Things don't always go the way they want. Often people wake up and start to question their bullshit and start to point it out. And I'll leave it at this. This is the main thing I wanted to sort of stick on the end, to make the point of, we're coming into the new year, we're coming into a new decade. I know this is like New Year's Eve, because tomorrow will be New Year's Eve. Everybody have a great New Year's. Don't let them trick you, and don't believe the bullshit that it's all about destruction and doom and all that kind of stuff. No, their methods are becoming more revealed and more obvious to people. And even though it might take a while for a lot of people to sort of realize what they're being presented with and start to do the work for themselves and start progressing for themselves, yeah, it might take a while, but that process is beginning. So I think there's still all the good optimistic point of view of a lot of people are starting to wake up to this shit. The system is always on the game to try and control information, control what people think and what they talk about with each other and what your perception of reality is, so that they can make sure that they keep their positions of power. Like I mentioned earlier with the cuckolding thing, when that began, when that term was first sort of put out, it was by people who were worried about their inheritance, their lands and properties and all the shit that they've stolen off the general populace being usurped by some cuckoo child that is not their own progeny. It's early eugenics, basically. And that is still true now. There are those people who sit on a lot of wealth and power that I can easily argue they have in one way or another stolen from other people. Certainly when you get a certain wealth bracket that is very controlled and you're not allowed that far up the pyramid unless you're part of the club, then they absolutely have stolen all their wealth and power from other people, and they live a pretense of having all this stuff. They absolutely are still obsessed with eugenics and their progeny. Materialism, because that's what eugenics is really about, having power in this material realm. So they're determined to not only trap themselves, trap their own spirits within this realm, they're determined to trap the spirits of all their progeny, all their lineage down the line into future generations, to persuade them of the same bullshit so that they all remain trapped here. Don't give, don't take that cuckoo egg. See that big crazy bird for what it is. Yeah, maybe you can adopt it if you're that open-hearted enough. Maybe you can live with adopting it and looking after it. But when it comes down to it, you got to recognize it for what it is: a usurper, an interloper. And it's trying to steal your phoenix from you. Don't let them get away with it.
You could say the same about something like a new TV episode. Yeah, you watch episode 1. That's the egg in your nest. Are you going to take it? Are you going to grow their illusion for them?
Yeah.
It's good. I like the way you mentioned cuck as well. Yeah, a cuck being the cuckoo egg. The illusions they plant in you. I'm going to post this in the thing. If you can screenshot for a minute, because this is just absolutely, it's so relevant. And if you want to help anybody wake up, yeah, just give them this book, yeah, and I'll post that in the thing. And I'll just read this. I'm not even going to read the first chapter. I'm just going to read the introduction. but for the present age, which prefers the sign to the thing signified, the copy to the original, representation to reality, appearance to essence. Truth is considered profane, and only illusion is sacred. Sacredness is in fact held to be enhanced in proportion as truth decreases and illusion increases, so that the highest degree of illusion comes to be the highest degree of sacredness. And that's why they've had to corrupt the divine feminine. They can't allow any truth. Yeah, so a divine feminine that nurtures, no, that's not allowed. It has to be a destroyer.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you was reading it, I was thinking, yeah, that's what I was trying to describe when I was talking about the feminine energy. Yeah, the feminine energy is what enables the rebirth. So they want to make sure they've got control of what is born. Yeah, the child that is born, which is their effort to create that technocratic structure.
Well, interestingly enough, somebody, an astrology channel, in fact, they did a video on the millennial, not the millennials, our generation, basically the ones that grew up in the 60s. And she mentioned how, wow, wasn't that a great time, wasn't it? Wasn't that a time of hope and everything else? And then look at the way the world's turned out now. Well, you could argue that that was a glimpse of the future, the dream of the 60s.
Yeah.
And what we've seen is the reaction to that change that they don't want. They don't want that change, the good one. They want their own one, which won't be a change at all. It will just be the same people, you know, moving their bank accounts around, basically.
Yeah.
Swapping their houses for bits of land. And
just stick into materialism again. Because
the
core of what led into what now could be called the New Age Church, as I usually refer to it as, a lot of the core of what it's talking about is classic spiritualism. It's ancient mystery school stuff. It's a mixture of Hinduism and Buddhism and stuff like that. It's a bit of an amalgamation, but at its core, it is about the progression of your spirit, of your soul. So that was not good for them, for the controllers, because they want people to stay here, because otherwise they would have no power here. If there's nobody to rule over, what are you the ruler of? So they need people to stay here. So they took those concepts and they buried them in a pile of commercialized shit that was about getting stuff, basically. Oh, you can't be enlightened until you've got a certain mandala or dream catcher or crystal, or you've been to visit so-and-so guru, and requirements within the physical. So that it keeps people trapped in the physical.
You mentioned that giving up the illusions is a bit like grief, but I would say it's people have been encouraged to have this idea of mental laziness, that you don't have to do the thinking, they'll do it for you. And you can add that as well to something else that I said in the comments, which is, if you want to do that inner work, you need to be, you need to at least have a healthy digestive system. Because if you're eating food all day, you can't sit and meditate if you keep burping the taste of your, chili, processed food. Yeah, you can't. Your inner work is literally inner. You're supposed to you feel good inside, and then you can focus your energy inside. So
I don't know. I think you could meditate on the reflux flavor of a kebab. Does it taste different on the burp reflux? When you burp and you get the flavor, does it taste better or worse when I actually ate it? I know what you say, right? So I'm just being silly.
Yeah, that's part of it, doing that inner work. It's much easier to look outside, and then of course you've got the addiction to the visual, which is something that people don't disconnect from. Yeah, I mean, just the way people used to sit in pubs, and somebody would give you an idea, and you say, "I think," and your eyes are blank because you're thinking. You're not looking at anything. You're thinking for a moment. People would copy that from each other, young kids, but nobody's copying the old memes, if you like. From each other, the ways to be, which involves cutting out the visual, for a start. But I think there's more to it. It's giving up your laziness. It's more than grief. It's sort of, I mean, if somebody is really not waking up because they're too lazy, then their reaction ain't going to be grief, it's going to be self-pity. Oh, I've got to wake up after all, poor me. You know, people are a massive false personality.
I've got to sweep the floor again.
Yeah, people don't want to do that. But on the positive side, I mean, look at the things you can do. I'll show that video that I had there, yeah, because this is absolutely cool. Yeah, this is absolutely really cool. Yeah, this video here. This is there we go. This guy makes these things here, yeah, and he makes them out of a sheet of paper. Like, you know, there's some little images of what he's doing, but it starts with something like that and that. All these triangles, yeah, they're going to be cut, and then he's going to start putting them together. Yeah? There you go, putting it together. Yeah? Dead easy. Yeah, not difficult at all. You make all these different models like this. Yeah. Now, why weren't people doing this for Christmas? Because I hadn't found the video at that time. But
as I said to you before we started, mate, it's a bit like cheating at origami.
Yeah, it could be. I'm not sure if you can make these from origami, but yeah. So origami is really good for things like the golden mean and how it relates to the bodies of animals. Yeah. It's
just the fact that the way he's doing it is as a flat sheet that he's putting snips and cuts in so that he can push them together. Whereas with origami, you're not doing that kind of thing, are you? So it's sort of like, it gives them the ability to do shapes that I haven't seen people do with origami, but I don't know, it just feels a little bit like cheating.
Well, if you ever tried taking earbuds like I did, and then getting a tiny little pair of pliers and making the little joints, yeah, and putting these models together, that's bloody hard. And doing it with wood can be even more difficult, because if you don't have a jig to saw the ends exactly the right angle, yeah, the glue won't stick together properly. They're actually very difficult to build these models, to build them really well, yeah. And so this is, not a shortcut, sure, but you know, any other way of trying to build the platonic solids is bloody difficult, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It gives you the ability to do stuff that normally you couldn't do with origami. So it's not necessarily so much a cheat. It's more just a different way of doing that kind of construction so that you can do more with it.
Yeah, this is the last one he does. He uses pentacles, actual pentacles, yeah? Oh, no, I think that was the one back here. It doesn't show you how they're cut. But he uses actual pentacles. There's one, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really difficult one to do, yeah? Without bending the corners.
How many is there as well, I wonder?
You can see them bending over a little bit there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got all the models. So it's a good little. Yeah, there it is.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's a difficult one. It's a good little channel though. This guy, he makes all kinds of things. Yeah? He made a tunnel cube the other day. Yeah, which is you fold up a tunnel. You know, it's like one of those little paper envelopes that you can turn inside out. Yeah. Eventually, when it's finished, it'll be like that. Yeah. And you can turn it inside out. Well, this might be a different one. There you go. Turn them inside out. All kinds of things.
Look at that as well. He's actually using paper and pencil.
Yeah.
I tried when I was doing Christmas cards and whatever. I was trying to write out a Christmas card. It's been that long since I've actually done any writing. It's like, what? My writing was just all over the place. Let me just scan down the chat box and I'll say hello to people in the chat. Thanks for joining us on this New Year's Eve. I'm going to go for a little bit longer because my throat's hurting and I'm finding it difficult to not be coughing and sniffing constantly.
Yeah, I did want to mention True Stream Media. Yeah, their video. You probably saw that. What's your social credit score?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
And I think I knew everything they told me about China, but when you put it all together from end to end, 40 minutes of it, it is frightening. And they can't think up things fast enough to find you on. It's
They talked about stuff that I've mentioned a few times. Certainly this year, I know I've mentioned it a few times. The concept that they drip feed in the public this idea of the social credit score as if it doesn't exist yet. And I kept saying, oh, it does already exist. It's just that it's separated into different parts, and they're kept separate at the moment by most of the companies that have them. But there will be groups and institutions like, what was that one that was the data breach thing? Analytica, Cambridge Analytica. Groups like that will be able to take quite a few of those scores and amalgamate them. So don't be naive into thinking that behind closed doors they don't already have the infrastructure ready to go where people's scores are already being counted. They are. Facebook has now been directly revealed, not just crazy conspiracy theories on the internet. So no, because they've been in court about this shit. They've been directly revealed to be keeping a score on everybody on Facebook. And when you know, because again, you can reference this is proven years ago, that Facebook keeps ghost accounts. So even if you've deleted your account, it's not really gone. They've kept it. They've just told you that they've gotten rid of it. They haven't. It's still in their data set because they want to keep monitoring you. You think you don't go to Facebook and you don't use Facebook anymore. Doesn't matter to Facebook. Facebook has got trackers out on the internet that are still watching you and reporting back to them so that they can update their ghost account of you. And that then updates your score. Yeah, the social credit score already exists for all of us. It's just that for most countries, they haven't come out and directly said they're going to use it and it's there. China has, because China is the model that they are using. And I've said that right from since I started doing this shit, and China is the model that we're all heading towards. So if you think China's frightening, welcome to the 2020s, right? This is what we've been ranting about for fucking a decade plus.
At the same, whoa.
She's having a good New Year.
It was laughing a minute ago. Oh, well. Laughter turns to tears. Anyway.
Tragedy and hope.
What I was going to say was, yeah, my comment under the True Stream Media, my comment under that video was like, don't, just because you see China doing this, don't think it's inevitable everywhere, because China was never free anyway. Yeah, I mean, they bigged up. I mean, what we know now, Tiananmen Square might have been actually a setup. Yeah, here's China showing these rebels, and then this is what we do with them: tanks. And like one guy standing in front of a tank. Oh, maybe China's not as bad as it is. No, they used to have informers. They had little local party members that would keep strict control. It was basically East Germany, all over. Always has been. So just because it's doing that in China, and then look just across the water, where the people could see it coming closer in Hong Kong, and look what they've been doing there. They're kicking up a hell of a fuss. So just because China can do this, don't think it's inevitable that it can happen. You can still kick back. You can still, you can still fight back against this, the creep of this. Yeah? But one of the most frightening aspects is that law and order is now going to be your social credit score. So the real crimes go unpunished. The Epsteins and who killed him, and Ghislaine and all the people that went to Epstein Island, not a single. I mean, if there was Cookie Island and all the people that had been there, everybody that would go there would be interviewed by the police. Well, what do you know about the place? What do you know about what went on there? But that hasn't happened to any of Epstein's visitors. Yeah, I mean, just trawling through all of his visitors, 500 of them. Yeah, you got to hit a handful of pedos. You got to, because that's what he was doing.
When they tell us that 1 in 10 people is a psychopath, then out of 500 people, and considering what he was doing in the first place, then guaranteed some of those are genuine paedophiles. They're not just businessmen trying to climb the greasy ladder. They're genuine paedophiles. I know that's even saying that just sounds wrong, because you shouldn't need to qualify that shit like that,
if you went to Epstein Island, you ought to be having a long interview with the police about what you did there, what you saw, who else you saw there. Was there anybody
Yeah,
you saw on the island who isn't in that book? They would be interesting.
but I do
No.
think most of that, mate, is part of the game. Any majorly incriminated evidence has already been removed. What we've been presented with is a Scooby-Doo cookie crumb trail that gives us just enough to make it obvious that there was something going on, but not enough to actually be able for any member of the public to actually be able to go and bang on the court door and say, hey, this guy needs trying, here's some evidence, here's this, that. No, you just get a little trickle of stuff so they can play out this Petergeddon pantomime in front of the public where supposedly Andrew is non grata, persona non grata, but and that just means you're not supposed to talk about him or mention him and blah blah, but he's all over the fucking news still. He's in all the newspapers still. The newspapers made a point of telling everyone that, oh yeah, the Queen went to her own church service and Andrew had to go to a different one because she's so upset with him because she's so good. It wasn't her and the entire family and the entire network of people that were involved. Oh no, it was just Andrew. He's a naughty. We slap him on the wrist, but he won't be prosecuted. So I'm ranting a bit, but hopefully you get the point. I think a lot of the Epstein shit, a really good big portion of it, is deliberately just to fuel the media circus. Yeah, it's like red meat into the Colosseum. I know that it's not true to say that people haven't been investigating the rest of it. They have. Lots of people have. And, it wouldn't be true to say that the various network and connections have not been pointed at by many people. It has, but that's not what's being presented in the mainstream to the general populace. To the general populace, it's just a fucking pantomime. Pedo panto. I'll fucking rant about that shit for ages, sorry. That's what I was going to do. Say hello to people in the chat room. I know I said hello to some of you earlier. Stewie and lots of Throw and Dave Iron. And I'm just scrolling. Paula B, hello. Hope you had a great Christmas. And have a great New Year.
Saul Bollocks used to run an origami shop, apparently, but apparently it folded.
Don't give up your day job. Louis Alexander Grimmier, I think I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Hello. John G. Beckett Esquire, hello. I'm scrolling. Michael Allen, hello. And Jip came home, hello. Neo Dog, hello. I'm hoping that the chat stays complete. It doesn't seem to be cashing out like it does sometimes. Super Leads, hello. Hope you're all having a good Christmas. Uni Black Sister, hello. I'll say have had a good Christmas. New Being, hello. Alan, Big Al McVicker, hello. I hope you haven't lost your voice. I'm sure you would have been doing lots of singing over Christmas.
I was surprised, I say, by the number of adverts, on I mean, I only watched a couple of hours of Christmas, but there's this one advert where you've got this guy with a quiff, and he's sitting on top of a yacht in the captain chair, and you see him from behind, and, it looks a lot like Trump, and the guy's sitting in his captain chair, and, the camera and thing are rocking on the ocean, and he gets up on his captain's chair, up on one cheek, and that's this great big trumpet go, and it's not just that, because at the end it kind of wheezes and whistles, so you know this is going to be a real stinker, and then this big deep voice comes on. Trump Bards, the new fragrance for men from Paco Rabanne. I just thought, when I saw that, I thought, you cookie.
Here's President Fart Told you. Probably some advertising exec somewhere heard me saying, he was like, oh, so yeah, do an advert based on that. Yeah. Bright, hello.
Right, man.
Bright 77, hello. Ron Malcolm, hello. Hope you're all doing well. I think I've scrolled all the way down. If I've missed you out, I apologise. I'm scrolling quickly. Soul bollocks, it is indeed. Hello. Yeah, I think I've scrolled all the way down. If I've missed anyone out, apologies. It's just me scrolling. Yeah, I'm going to wind it up at that rate because I'm flagging. I need to get some more honey and lemon and dig out another. I've got an extra shirt here that I've been wearing periodically when I get the shivers. So I need to wrap up a bit and wait for the new year to begin. I hope you all had a good solstice as well. I noticed it was, I know I've said this before in the past and I'm just externalizing it. But to me, it felt like quite a shift over the solstice weekend. Then we had the news coming out about the OPCW stuff and the Andrew stuff and whatever. It just felt very definitive, the shift after the solstice or over the solstice period. I don't know if anybody else sort of felt that. It's almost like, when you've been inside for a few hours and you walk out and it's got that fresh, crisp winter sense to the air and you get that rush of cold air and it makes you very alert for a moment. Yeah. But at the same time, it's got a very relieving sensation to it. I'm probably not making any sense. It felt like a weight had been lifted, put it that way. And the energy shift over the solstice, it felt very much like it was a weight being shifted in some fashion. And I do think a lot of the stuff that's been revealed over the last few months, what the changes are going to be is, debatable. Like that's what we usually do, talking about that kind of shit. But the fact that there are major changes coming and are happening now, I think that's pretty much undeniable.
Well, I talked about the digestive system earlier on. The moon rules the digestive system. So to full moon, where you're full of energy after eating, to the new moon, where it's black, which is what we had for the eclipse on the 25th, which is basically the cosmic equivalent of taking a dump. Yeah, we've just let a load go, yeah?
Yeah.
And the timing was pretty good because the eclipse wasn't on the solstice itself, so there wasn't a big magnification of negativity. It was just, over an extended period of time. But I noticed this year, Christmas actually didn't start until about 4 days before here. Yeah. I mean, there were decorations and that, but you can normally walk around, 2 weeks before Christmas and people say, oh, you're going to have a good Christmas, this, you keep hearing the word Christmas. But here it's like bon Nadal, yeah, good Christmas. But I didn't really hear people saying that until about 4 days before, yeah. So it was quite a slow build up here, probably because of money.
I think it was fairly, I'd say, normalish here in the UK. There was at least a good couple of weeks before, and there was loads of people that had done the usual kind of stuff, like got all the lights out the front of their houses and stuff like that. And here where I live, there was a fair turned up, like a Christmas fair. Had a few traveling fun fair rides kind of stuff and some stalls selling shit, usual kind of tats, like silly hats and whatever. But the thing, it was, quite popular. There was a good couple of thousand people there. So I don't know, maybe it's just something in Spain at the moment. The mood in Spain is different. Here in the UK, I know there's a lot of conflict between people over the Brexit thing, but even though there's that conflict, especially now that the election is done with, and they claim they've got their stonking mandate and whatever, but now maybe it's that kind of effect that we had here in the UK, where people felt like, oh, all right, now that's done with. Now we can all just enjoy Christmas. So they just got on with it. Huh?
Yeah, because people don't want to be divided by the powers that be. They don't like the powers that be saying, oh, you have to join this camp or that camp. People like to be together. People like they're a collective. And so, yeah, I think you could be right. But, you know, it's like I said here in Spain, it's different every year. You know, one year you've got all the offices and the shops taking all their workers out on little parties everywhere. And you can't miss them, you know. It was like really visible one year. And the next year, everyone's not spending their money so much. But also, I don't know if it's because we've become cynical, but I don't think Black Friday was quite so much. I mean, here it's changed from Black Friday to Black Week. And I've even seen advertisements for Black Month.
Yeah, that's why it is. I think it's basically become meaningless. It's been meaningless really for 2 decades. It was only really relevant, literally, in the 90s in America. That was the only place it was relevant, and it was simply because the way they worked their delivery systems and the way the shops changed stock at that time period. Every other country worked slightly different, so no other country had the same kind of effect. But for other reasons, I think the American commercial industry deliberately played on it, and they tried to turn it into a shopping holiday.
Yeah, well, I mean, I did notice last year and the previous few years, it has generated a lot of excitement among people, but not this year. People just weren't really interested.
Yeah, because it's become utterly meaningless when you can get stuff delivered overnight, even depending on what you're ordering and where from, or via the internet. You can get stuff delivered within a few hours. So the whole concept that, oh, you have to go and buy everything all by this last date, it's meaningless now.
Yeah, and Amazon is using the lack of overheads to undercut everybody else's prices.
Yeah,
and probably using Google as well. I mean, I mentioned this before, that if you're living in South London and you want to buy a new phone, Amazon are able to pay Google to make sure that you receive little ads for a new phone that are going to be £5 less than people in North London, if that's going to put people out of business in South London. Yeah, they'll do that. I mean, Christ, man, what they're capable of nowadays is, and they used to come under monopoly rules. But
but why do you think Amazon had contracts set up with the government, with the American government in particular, and he's been in negotiation with other governments as well? Because the reality being revealed, the facade being washed away, the reality is the corporatist infrastructure where business and industry are basically one and the same thing. Government and business and industry are one and the same thing. They just pretend that there's some kind of democratic structure. There isn't.
It wasn't Bezos that started Amazon, was it?
No, I don't think he started. No, he just became CEO several years ago and sort of dominated the position.
That's right.
I can't remember it was he started it.
They let 2 or 3 companies start going at the same time. Yeah, Amazon was going to be the biggest, and then after a meeting at Bohemian Grove, it's decided that Bezos is going to be in there, because I'm sure he has been picked from the beginning to play the part that he's playing. He's not. Elon Musk might have been an organic product. Yeah?
Well, I don't think he is. No,
No,
he's a creation. He's links into other people and groups and things like PayPal and whatever. No, he's absolutely not. He's not natural. He's not organic. He's manufactured. He's there to be that Tony Stark style icon of technology, so that people can have a new idol in the church of scientism to worship.
That's as important to them as having these identities is as important to them as the structure of everything itself, because people are supposed to model. Oh, I wish I'm going to be more like an Elon Musk instead of being yourself. The ruthless people, they want to be a Bezos. I mean, there's a lot of people even nowadays that sport that bold look. That's the go-ahead businessman look.
In the 90s, it was Alan Sugar. I remember that. Yeah, he was paraded around all over the UK press as being some kind of icon for people to emulate. Look at how great this businessman is, and blah, blah. Oh, that's one thing to mention, because he was knighted as well, wasn't he? And supposedly the list for people on the honours list was leaked. Isn't that convenient? With all the debacle going on with the royals at the moment, and the honours list gets leaked, and Ian Duncan Cunt is on the honours list. So, I know people have already been saying, I know you said there's a petition for it and stuff like that, but it's just because I mentioned Alan Sugar and stuff. It's like, yeah, there you go. That's the corporatism again.
It's not a surprise anyway. All MPs end up on it. All retired MPs, pretty much. But remember in the days of Blair, where he was actually selling them to businessmen. Yeah, about 50,000, wasn't it? Some Indian businessman who runs a giant chutney company. Who bought loads. The guy was actually a good bloke. He bought loads of work. He had a factory. He'd actually done something in the British industry as opposed to most of the rest of them. But then there was loads of controversy about that because he brought it. It just goes to show you, yeah.
You just have to do like Tony Blair did. Just smile like a shark and sell everything that people think they own. Sell your soul, sell everything. Or do a Cameron and just stick your willy in a dead pig. Yeah. Oh, drop that. Oh, well, whatever.
Like Boris did.
Yeah. Oh, I could rant about that as well, the way the press was filled with pictures of him and his missus on holiday. It's like, why are you just rubbing people's noses in it? Fuck off. Oh, man. Yeah. Anyway, I think I've ranted enough for tonight. Thanks again for joining us, folks, on this New Year's Eve. I really don't think that Pete's going to be here on New Year's Day to do... by the looks of it, he's just joined the room. But I was going to say that obviously there won't be a reality chat on Wednesday. Well, let me just ask him to make sure. Hello, you made it.
Hello, yeah, sorry, better late than never, but Happy New Year, everybody, and hope you all had a good Christmas. No, I won't be on New Year's Day, no. I'm on the following Wednesday, yeah, I'm going to be away. So, yes, so I've been listening, I just didn't, I just got back, so it was a bit of a late one, so I thought, well, you said it was going to be a short one, but it has gone on an hour and a half, so I thought, well, okay, I'll dive in quick before you go, so.
Cool, that's good, because I was just about to wrap it up. No, losing my voice rapidly.
Yes, yes, I can hear you've got a bit of a cold, but yes, a bit of lemon, bit of honey, you'll be back on your feet.
Wish I had some cinnamon as well, but I haven't at the moment. I'm glad you jumped in. I thought you weren't on New Year's Day, but it's going to be next week, which is the 6th, I seem to remember.
Yes, well, we've got a lot to talk about the solstice you mentioned, which was I totally agree with what you were saying there. Yeah, definitely a shift, because I was in a place, a sacred place in Anglesey called Bryn Kidley Dhu, or D, I think is how you pronounce it.
Cool.
And right in the chamber as well, where there's some petrified rock, wood, should I say, petrified wood that's turned to stone, basically. And yeah, there was what a morning that was. I didn't see the sun come like through the clouds, but obviously it was light, but definitely felt some pretty powerful energy in there. It was, yeah.
Cool. Is that the new stones you got on the image?
No, that's that's West Kennet Long Barrow, that one you can see there. That's the outside, just at an angle, you can't really see the mound, but that's the blocking stone that they put there when they shut shop back in the day.
Your name's not on the list, you ain't coming in.
Yeah, put a big stone there. There you go. So, yeah.
Maybe Christmas night's over. I hope you've all survived.
Yes.
And Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year to you all as well, yeah.
And we will see you again soon, folks. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to click the button now. So cut choose. Clicking. Clickety button.